I knew this day would come, but I didn't expect it so soon. Thanks to the actions and statements of Nancy Pelosi in the last 48 hours, the president has brought forth his decision, and the Kraken has been unleashed.
And it's Tuesday. That's right, Tuesday. It's summertime mayhem. This is May 28th, 2019. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out the Coup podcast. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Each week, I talk to our Capitol muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. And that was Sebastian Gorka from his dusty basement dwelling. Oh, my God. On today's show, Dems can't quite get themselves to impeachment, and it's getting more and more difficult to sustain a rationale for not beginning at least an impeachment inquiry. Well, it's like he wants it, so we can't do that. So, because he might know we want whatever. Turns out the White Knight Robert Mueller doesn't want to testify in public. Wah! Something about not wanting to tarnish his personal brand. Really? What's up with the walking on eggshells around the Special Counsel? And as the Trump administration prepares to go after Julian Assange, investigative journalism is in the crosshairs. Make no mistake about it, this move is less about Julian Assange and more about gagging the muckraking press. And right-wing extremism is on the rise in Europe. Right-wing parties from France to Italy to Poland to Bulgaria came out strong in this past weekend's EU elections. And of course, Steve Bannon was all over the place. Theresa May steps down as Prime Minister of the UK on Friday, and a perfect character, Tony Blair, emerges from his dusty vault to blame Corbyn. Of course, that makes freaking sense. Making the way, of course, for Boris as the likely person to emerge as the next Prime Minister. Today's PA focus, Tom Corbett's, yes, you heard that correctly, Tom Corbett's Charter Appeals Board met last week to grant an appeal to Catalyst Charter School in Pittsburgh. And they will be meeting again in a couple more weeks to possibly grant appeals to, get ready for this, Eastern University Charter School in Philadelphia and Propel Charter School in Pittsburgh. Yeah, they're just running them through, everybody. Gotta love it. Eastern University Charter School had their charter renewal application denied by the Philadelphia School Reform Commission, and Propel had their application denied by the Pittsburgh School District and Pennsylvania Department of Education. Propel has 8 charters across Allegheny County, and they are looking to, set up their own quasi-school district in western PA. Yep, we're moving to stage 2 of charterization of public schools, folks. The issue with the Charter Appeals Board that is dominated by the 5 corporate appeals... the issue with the Charter Appeals Board is that it is dominated by 5 corporate appointees whose term expired in 2015, and Tom Wolfe has yet to kind of even take an interest. It's crazy. In other PA news... That's right, Sean tells us nothing happened. In today's last call, SpaceX's new launch of 60 Starlight satellites freaks out a bunch of people who thought aliens were finally invading. Meanwhile, astronomers are pissed, saying Starlink will permanently alter the night sky. Elon Musk says that he hears the concerns, and the next batch of satellites will not be so shiny. In other words, they won't look like a string of pearls going across the night sky. Despite Tesla's problems, SpaceX raised over $1 billion in 2 rounds of funding, in large part to its new Starlink system, which will basically provide global internet access everywhere. And it is the next stage of galactic capitalism, as I have been saying. Sean's YOLOing at ArtFest. Nothing happened elsewhere in PA. Totally unrelated, by the way. We're looking for someone interested in covering what's happening in PA to come on the podcast from time to time. Oh, and last Saturday was the 4th annual Pints and Paws at Free Will. Yeah, we would have told you about it in advance, but we skipped out on you again on Friday, so here we are on Tuesday. But they did release a special kind of co-release with their friends at Harley's Haven. Harley's Haven, they kind of do, protect pets and things like this. They released Haven, a New England-styled IPA hopped with cashmere, mosaic, and citra. Prominent notes of ripe summer berry compote and orchard-pressed white peach give way to pleasant floral airness and reminiscent of mimosa flowers and chamomile. And underlying citrus character with soft, fluffy mouthfeel. 7%. But those are available at, I believe there's still cans available. And it's on tap too as well if they haven't completely gone out of it. But $4 from every 4-pack sold will be donated to Harley's Haven Dog Rescue. So get on over to Free Will and pick up some Harley. Want to remind everybody, tune in to the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org. You can also tune in on Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. And make sure you download Rick's daily podcast on iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. We want to thank everybody who's become a member. Our newest member, Nancy, came in last week at $10 a month. Thank you once again, Nancy. And we remind everybody, if you want a progressive future, we need progressive media. You can help support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a member of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. That's like a craft beer. Or like that's like not even like the morning outing for Sean at Arts Fest. Come on. $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. And if you're not ready to become a member, you can go to ragingchickenpress.org, click on the big blue donate button in the right sidebar, and give whatever you can. But the best way to support what we do is by becoming a member at patreon.com/rcpress. Become a member for those $5 a month. I should let everybody know, too, as well, we are now officially on Spotify as well as all the other platforms. So if you are a Spotify listener, please hang out with us over at Spotify. You can pick up this podcast on Spotify. So, Sean, man, so you recovered from the big Art Fest weekend, I take it, or partially recovered, I guess.
Yeah, I recovered. I went into a carb coma pretty early last night, like around 6 o'clock, and
yeah. Well, so, I like your picture. You posted your little selfie of like irresponsible spending at the Arts Fest.
Yes. So every year in Harrisburg, there is this thing called Arts Fest. It's Memorial Day weekend. A bunch of vendors come in from the Mid-Atlantic region. They set up their tents, and there's also there's a wine and beer tasting area that you can get actually full pints of beer and cups of wine and solo cups. I decided to drink. I started off my one afternoon with 2 8% double IPAs at like 12:30 in the afternoon on pretty much an empty stomach, and the rest went downhill from there.
Or uphill if you happen to be one of the vendors.
Yes. No, I did not buy any. I did not buy any art. I was just walking around with my camera and just having fun. There is one other thing of Pennsylvania news I'd like to put in there.
Oh God, he remembered something. That must have jogged his memory, everybody.
Well, we may be able to talk about this on Friday if we have the podcast on Friday. There's going to be a big hospital worker strike today out in Pittsburgh. UPMC workers are striking.
Yes.
And Bernie Sanders, once again, proving that he is the only Labor candidate out there, pretty much, besides Elizabeth Warren. Just put out those two are the big Labor candidates. He used that in his email blast this weekend to promote people to go to the strike and support the workers if they're living in the area, which is a pretty good, awesome. Which is a pretty good thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So get out there and support UPMC, and way to go to Sanders. Everyone recalls back in the day when Obama was kind of running for office, his big thing was like, workers are on the picket line. Oh, I'm going to put on a pair of comfortable shoes and join them, right? And he did not, ever. And in his entire presidency, did not once walk with labor on a picket line. So there you go. And Bernie Sanders, leading up to the 2020 election campaign, he's really never stopped since 2016, really. But he's out there kind of actively encouraging people to engage in acts of solidarity workers engaged in union struggle. So or just worker struggles in general. So it's pretty awesome.
I know. It's also, I guess, if we say one thing, what Sanders is doing, what Warren has been doing, they've really pushed labor to the forefront of the platform for the 2020 election. Usually Democrats used to treat labor like the plague, or not get involved with labor at all. We saw with with Obama and others. Now it's actually becoming a main platform of the Democratic Party, as always should have been.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I didn't put this in the notes for today, but I'll kind of touch on it quickly. I was thinking about we talk about it more on Friday a little more extensively, because we have to have a relatively short show today. Sean's got actual real work to do, for a change. Just kidding. I always think people are going to walk by you say, "Hey, Sean, wasn't that you over on Roxbury's porch the other day?" And you're just kind of like, "It wasn't me." It wasn't me.
You're sprawled out, arm passed out like a drunk.
I wanted to have that as a sound drop today. It wasn't me, but I was like, I don't want to get myself in FCC trouble. But okay, let me just talk about this quickly since you brought up Sanders and Warren. One thing that I wanted to point out today, with in particular with Elizabeth Warren, is that she, it's been really interesting watching her campaign, because she's been consistently gaining in the polls, right? So now this past week, I want to say it's Rasmussen, or not Rasmussen, it's another one of the top polls, had her kind of at 10%, right? And that's significant, or 9 or 10%. There's a couple polls that have her kind of right up in there. Quinnipiac, I think, had her at 10. The other one had her, I could pull that up a little bit later on. But the idea was she's been steadily kind of increasing her support. Right, so people started writing her off, and people Pete, Buttigieg, and the golden retriever embodied in playing Beto O'Rourke were polling higher than Warren, and now Warren is actually steadily increasing, because I think in large part because of the way that she's been campaigning about releasing these plans and then going out and talking about them, right, and then really pushing them on social media and doing exactly as what you said, also really kind of supporting labor and making labor kind of a forefront.
And also putting out a comprehensive abortion rights platform, too.
That's right.
Which is something Democrats have never conceivably ran on in the past.
Look, yeah, and Warren was the first out of the gate, right? I mean, and not only did she come out of the gate with saying I support abortion rights. No. She came out with a plan to basically make it so that the right to access to abortion was going to be legal everywhere, and there was nothing you could do about it, right? I mean, Warren she's been a really fascinating candidate to watch, because I think that what she has kind of, from my personal opinion, what she struggles with as a candidate, just in terms of the politics and the optics of it sometimes, is that her substance is actually really catching fire. And it's interesting that both Warren and Sanders are the two campaigns that are really pushing the hardest in areas that kind of were formerly dominated by Trump, right? So while you get like Pete Buttigieg, and you get, Beto's kind of really out of it at this point, but Pete Buttigieg kind of keeps on getting these kind of like media moments, right? In part because he's kind of made for TV centrist, right? And it's easy for the media to cover him, and he says some decent things, but okay, whatever. But
he had to get walked off the plank from going on Dave Rubin's podcast.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he had to have come on, man. The pitchforks were at his back on that one. But so I don't know. So it's been a really interesting campaign, and so both Sanders and Warren are doing just really great stuff. What's interesting is that we had Kamala Harris, who was came out so powerfully with her initial rally and things like this. I mean, it's not that she hasn't been doing anything, but I think she's been really moving, campaigning as this senator in some ways. That is bring things forward. So it's interesting to see that she's not getting the limelight in the same way. And I actually think that's a negative thing. I think she should be getting more kind of limelight and campaigning rather than Pete Buttigieg, right? I mean, I think Kamala Harris has got a lot more interesting things to bring to the table. And I'm not saying I agree with a whole bunch of her campaigns, but she's got a lot more kind of, I don't know, chops than Buttigieg and kind of like really the rest of the field, and then you've got some, the issue candidates, so on. The other thing is Andrew Yang continues to kind of climb in some polls too as well. So that's going to be really interesting when it comes for the debates, which are sneaking up on us in about a month from now. So. So Sean, the the two things I really was interested in talking about today primarily was both the first stuff on the kind of impeachment, and secondly about the Mueller stuff. I guess three things: Mueller and then Assange, because one, the impeachment things. But I don't know how much that you're thinking about this right now, but it's been driving me insane listening to Democrats go on. I actually have the sound saved from Chris Hayes' show, but going on these shows and talking about how horrible Trump is and how he continues to obstruct justice. And Chris Hayes, on that show, Chris Hayes would ask him questions like, does that mean you support opening an impeachment inquiry? Right? It's like a yes or no question. And they would go into
that's all, folks.
Yeah, well, they would go into, there are a lot of issues that are involved with impeachment, and you're like, if I am just a
3D chess, man, and Chinese checkers all combined at the same time, and we can't learn these rules as quickly and master the game.
It's unbelievable. And if all I know, if I'm a person that doesn't follow politics and I see them, I just see people that are just full of shit. I see people that are full of shit. You just told me that this is the worst man on the face of the planet, and they're wrecking our democracy.
And the thing is, it's and that's the thing. Trump has never had anyone stand up to him and say, "No, you can't do this." Right. And the most powerful woman in the world, Nancy Pelosi, is going to fall right in line with that.
Well, but her latest excuse, I really nearly ripped out what remaining hair I have on my head. Right? I mean, it was when she said that. Well, it wasn't just her. Let me be fair. It was not just her. It was a bunch of them in the leadership. But then when they're saying basically that the reason we don't want to move forward with that is because Trump is trying to goad us into it. So because he wants it, we're not going to give it to him. It's the most fucked up logic I have heard in ages. I mean, you've got to be kidding me.
And then also this past week, got to say that Mary Gay Scanlon and Madeline Dean have both come out for impeachment inquiries.
Yes, they have. And, again, I think Mary Gay Scanlon's kind of pushed to read the Mueller report on the floor. I think a lot of people kind of poo-pooed that as kind of well, what's this actually doing? What was interesting about that was that it forced people to focus on the issue, and it gave a little bit of breathing space for people to actually say, this is kind of what we have to do.
And you also have something like Justin Amash saying, no one has read the report. I have read the report. And he should be impeached.
Yeah, you got a Republican showing Democrats how to argue for impeachment. I mean, it's insane. And let's remember, the presidential candidate who came out the strongest for impeachment again was Elizabeth Warren, right? And she did it in very much the same way that Amash did. She said, "Hey, look, I read the report, and I don't know how you finished reading that report and not okay." You're left with no options. So the fact that Democrats are trying to dig themselves out of the pathway of impeachment through kind of these back-breaking arguments is mind-boggling to me.
And at this point, even if it does not go through in the Senate, it's an accountability issue. Yeah, you have to hold into account. Right. You have to say, no, this cannot happen. Because, listen, I really feel and we've had these conversations in the newsroom with some of the old-time reporters who are, pretty moderate. Yeah. And even they're thinking, this might be the last free election of my lifetime.
Yeah. Yes.
There are people up there who are worried in the newsroom saying, this may be the last election, I ever see in my lifetime. Free election.
Yeah, so again, from that statement, the next thing that follows is kind of therefore, we have to go all full force, full frontal attack.
You seen what happened this past week with Trump rally in Pennsylvania.
Yes,
calling for the death penalty of Comey and others. You are. This is dangerous rhetoric. This is we've already crossed this Rubicon.
The Rubicon has been crossed multiple times. The Rubicon is now a super highway, right? Yeah. It's not a freaking path through the. You know what I'm saying?
We are just belly splashing right into the abyss at this point. Like,
dude, the Rubicon. We need to build the wall on the Rubicon. Is where we need it right now.
But I mean, like, no, I mean, I said this before. It shows you how spineless Democrats are. We had a chance to hold George W. Bush accountable for war crimes, legitimate war crimes in 2006. We had a chance to actually have him arrested and tried for war crimes in 2008. And everyone wanted to say, no, we're going to look forward and we're not going to go look back on this and rehash these wins. Like, what's the excuse now?
No, look, let's say this, right? The fact is that he committed war crimes, right? And his administration committed war crimes. They lied to Congress, the UN, and the world, got us into a war that, like, hundreds of thousands of people that died, right? And that we're still enmeshed in, right? And now people look back at George Bush as, like, a nice guy, right? We thought he was bad. This guy's worse. Okay. Just hold that in your brain. Therefore, we got to go after this guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that Pelosi, when she's going out there talking about like divisiveness, like we don't want to be divisive. I'm like, where have you been? Like, where the hell have you been?
Hanging with Joe Biden.
Yeah, hanging with Joe Biden. I mean, I guess. Right? And maybe taking tea with, like, you know, the freaking what's left over from the, like, you know, the third way people. I mean, it just boggles my mind. Did you see this
weekend? Okay. Did you see this weekend that, like, Sanders said, I am not going to apologize for my, like, resistance to the Iraq War and Vietnam War?
Yeah.
And Bill Kristol, like, of all fucking people, chimed up and said, never Sanders. Like, dude, you should be fucking first person in line to be sent to the goddamn gulags. Like, at this point, like one of the most evil, despicable fucking human beings on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
And we give him a platform still.
Yeah, well, we give him a platform despite the fact that he's got, like, nothing to say and no authority to say it. Right? The only reason he's got a platform is because he's one of these people that kind of came out against Trump.
Project, pretty much. Like,
yeah, I mean, that whole what was it called? The Project for New American Century, right?
Century for New American Project or whatever. Yeah.
Project for New American Century. Yeah, it is like you go in there, like, basically laying out the plans for American empire, right? I mean, that's the dude. And because he said Trump bad man, right? He gets a platform, and we actually take his opinion seriously, which is freaking crazy. Right, but, you know, the good thing is really he has very little impact beyond. I mean, look, the guy is like a walking embalmment as it is now. So I mean that guy drives me nuts. But I just think the last thing I really want to kind of hit on this is, like, the thing is that what the logic goes something like this: because the Republicans control the Senate, that it is not. Doesn't make sense to go forward with impeachment because the Senate will not convict him anyways. Okay. Now, if you recall, right, I hold myself accountable to this because early on, when these first thinking about that, right, I was kind of like, well, okay, how do we actually think about this, right, about politically? But I'm at the point now, right, like a lot of people, I think, that once you've kind of read the report, once you kind of listen to people kind of go, there's really no pathway left. And actually just to cling on to kind of like political maneuvering is actually like a cop-out and a show of cowardice. You know, let me just finish this thought because otherwise I'm going to forget it and I have to keep on coming back to it. So the thing is that this shows you that Democrats have not been comfortable exercising power. Right, because the thing is that they assume that because this won't go through the Senate, then you shouldn't do it. But at the same time, they say, well, we need to focus on other things, which they're going to pass in the House and are not going to get approved in the Senate, which again doesn't make any sense. But the thing is that it's as if impeachment by itself is out of their control. When really what it is, it's like because it is impeachment, you go forward and you make your case. And either you think you have a case or you don't. If you don't, then you're just messing around. But if you think you got a case, like I think a lot of increasingly more people do, then you make your case hard. And yes, it will be a fight. But you got to be ready to fight.
You know what I think we should do? What's a really good alternative?
Do tell.
We should pick the worst possible candidate possible for 2020.
Yep.
Joe Biden.
Yep.
And like, let's just make this a 2020 campaign issue and then lose in 2020.
I think that's a good plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we go with Biden, right? We lose we
pick someone who is more out of touch than Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
And then, like,
who's a groper. And, a guy who basically is going to set back kind of Democratic politics, at least forever, because, he's the guy who wouldn't stand with Anita Hill and basically ensured that she was going to get kind of virtually lynched on TV, right? So selling out. I mean, look, it was, you got to admit, you got to give Biden credit. He was able to sell out women and African Americans at the same time.
Yeah. So I mean, what? Yeah.
So there we go. I think that's a good plan going forward, Democrats. Everyone get behind Biden, lose 2020, and whine. All right, as our planet catches on fire. Let's do that. That sounds like a good plan. I'm for it. I'm with you, Sean, man. I'll start with the bumper stickers.
I'm getting an expatriation list together where everyone become an expat, too.
Yeah.
Start making a list of countries.
Yeah.
So,
God, I'm just thinking about bumper stickers. Like, say, fuck it, Joe Biden 2020. Like let's just throw our hands up in the air. Let's just go down the toilet bowl. Come on, let's do it now. I'm tired. Right? Just kill me now. Oh man.
I think Biden. I don't see him lasting. I think Biden's gonna be done before the fucking New Hampshire.
I think so.
South Carolina primaries. I mean, like. Again, as I said this on Twitter over the weekend. His whole entire platform is just codifying white nationalism within the Democratic Party.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty much what it is at this point. I mean, come on. I
hear Sean. By the way, I just heard this. I just got this ringing in my ear, and I get that every time that a bunch of our listeners start clutching their pearls. Oh my! Did you just say that, Sean?
No, I mean, we have to appease the oppressors.
It's just crazy.
Like we have to find appeasement with the people who stand with those in Charlottesville, who are taking away reproductive rights, who are taking away LGBT rights, who are attacking trans people, who are attacking workers, immigrants, women.
Right.
We have to have unity with those people.
Right.
Which that whole entire logical progression of who and what. You just keep on asking yourself that question in that rabbit hole, you'll just come to the fact that Joe Biden is just a white nationalist.
Well, and you think about what that means. Think about what that means from a global perspective now too, right? I mean, I talked about this in the opening, but you just had EU elections, right? And the kind of the right wing parties, the kind of the Brexiteers of Europe.
I mean, he's our Macron, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, what does it mean to actually have someone, an American like an American president? Right, who's actually going to have that attitude with rising fascism, neo-fascism, right, across Europe too as well. I mean you got to think about these things. I mean, the fact that he's not only doing it just at home, but he's going to appease the neo-fascists, right? I mean, really?
Neville Chamberlains of the world.
Yeah, it's like have we not been through this before to disastrous results? I mean, God.
Yeah.
So let me just say. Well, go
I'm
ahead,
done
sorry.
with my Biden rant for the day.
Yeah. No. That's good. So here's the other thing. I just want to this is the other thing that drives me crazy. Jerry Nadler, right, representative, head of the Judiciary Committee, was on Rachel Maddow Friday night, or Thursday night. I'm sorry, and Rachel Maddow has been, again, if anybody has heard us talk, has heard anybody talk, or been watching Maddow, it's Russia, 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 right? So the logical conclusion to the Rachel Maddow show is going to be Robert Mueller, right? That's that's in the narrative. Robert Mueller testifying before Congress is that peak performance that leads to supposedly, right, the downfall of Trump, right? That's the narrative constructed there. But and it's not just Maddow. It's across the kind of hashtag resistance kind of Democrats who have put all their eggs in the Robert Mueller basket. But now, it's 60 days have passed. Robert Mueller is nowhere to be found, right? And then finally,
just booked it out of here. Just
dude, he's on an island someplace. They say they're negotiating with him. That's bullshit, man. He's given up he's renounced his citizenship.
He's in Bermuda and just sitting in a villa.
Yeah, he's out enjoying the kind of last days of the Maldives right now, I think. Right? I mean, that's where he's at. But it's so they put all, and now he's not going to testify because the narrative was supposed to be Mueller wants to testify. Remember, he wrote that blistery letter to Barr about how Barr was misrepresenting his thing. So obviously he'd want to testify. And Nadler comes on and says, well, we've been in negotiations for a long time. It's like, first of all, I'm like, who are you freaking negotiating with? Right? I mean, you
send a subpoena and you got to serve.
Exactly.
You've been served and you have to show up.
Right. Because you've given like Mueller this kind of like demigod status is like, now it's like you can't tarnish him with a subpoena because he might be mad, right? He might throw a lightning bolt your way. I mean, you compel the testimony if he's not going to do it. And instead they're in this weird negotiation. So now Mueller basically says that he wants to testify privately, right? And maybe release a public transcript, but he does not want to appear on TV. Because of his image? Are you freaking kidding me? Who do we give this guy? Show me one person, right, who has a key, like is a key witness in any other crime or any other kind of investigation who gets that degree of latitude, right? Could you imagine? Like something like, you have a kind of like the major mob boss is about to get taken down, right? And the guy who leads the investigation won't come to testify. He goes, he's more worried about himself.
He sees the brother in the back room.
Right. I mean, you kidding me? I mean, you got to be kidding me. And the fact that what drove me even more insane than the fact that, that they're still hoping there is the fact they're still giving him like the leeway. Well, we still hope to have him. No. Show a damn spine and compel his testimony if he's not going to go forward. And make your case to the American people. Because guess what? There's a good chunk of the American people who are already pissed off at Mueller. Right? And there's a good chunk of American people who are on the Mueller train who are now getting more pissed off at Mueller. And if you are going to be the person and the committee, the Judiciary Committee, standing in the way of like Mueller testifying, guess who's the next in line to get pissed off at? You guys. So, I mean, this is just crazy. And I don't, again, call me naive if you want, but I've never been an inside ballpark guy, right? I'm interested in, democracy and compelling justice and things like this. I could give a shit if it kind of, how it plays out in terms of, how people feel about each other inside the government. So, right there. That's all I got to say about that. I don't know if you got anything else to add, but I'm just mad about that.
No, I am not one bit surprised.
Exactly. The last thing I want to talk about before we go to the break is what is probably what should be on the front pages of every freaking newspaper nonstop right now is the Trump administration's move to go after and prosecute Julian Assange on espionage charges and for treason. This is, I can't even begin to unpack, and we're going to get into this more on Friday, but to unpack how potentially devastating this will be to investigative journalism, because we have to be able to kind of walk and chew gum at the same time here, right? One, we can say Julian Assange, right? He's not my favorite guy at all, right? I was never a fan of Julian Assange before. I'm glad WikiLeaks did some of the things that it did, right? But as a person, I could care less about him, right? And especially the direction that he's moved to. So there's Julian Assange, the person. Again, Julian Assange, bad man. Okay, let's stipulate that, even if you disagree with that. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, he's a bad man. All right. What this lawsuit is about, right? What this attempt to kind of prosecute Assange about is saying that because WikiLeaks, right, encouraged people to submit classified information, right, then therefore Assange is going to be convicted of treason, of espionage. Okay? Why does that matter? Well, basically, that is the lifeblood of investigative journalism. Right? Investigative journalism depends upon people submitting things to them. Now, what is illegal? Let's be clear about this. If I'm a journalist writing a story, right, and someone tells me that they think that there's wrongdoing going on at a company that they work for example, or the government, right? And if I, as the journalist, now tell that person, say, listen, you should go into this computer and hack into this computer and steal this stuff to find out for sure, and I'll give you some money for it or not, or I'm going to tell you to go do that, right? And then you go do it. That I can't do, right? But if someone comes forward to me I am protected, right? And our First Amendment, and I haven't heard people say this enough, our First Amendment doesn't say freedom for journalists in the press. It says freedom of the press. At the time that our Constitution was written, there were not professional journalists, right? There were people, kind of like what we do, right, out there writing, digging into stories, and reporting on stuff in the world. That was the press. That was the right of people to write and hold their elected officials, their government, their corporations, their community, hold them to account. Right? That has been the lifeblood of that First Amendment. Right? And to say that I am going to take away, right, the ability for someone to leak documents that are going to expose what our government is doing, right? That is going to put a chilling effect on all investigative journalism. It's basically saying when the New York Times published the Pentagon Papers, then that was an act of treason and therefore punishable by death. And then as Sean said in the onset, right, then he goes out to Pittsburgh, right, Sean? Mm-hmm. He goes out to Pittsburgh and basically...
No, he went up Pittsburgh. He went up to...
No, that's right.
Central Pennsylvania, Williamsport.
No, it wasn't Williamsport, was it?
Or Lake Homing. Yeah, he went up to Lake Homing. Yeah, because that's where the special election was last week.
Right. And he goes out there and basically calls out people committed treason. And when he's asked about that, he starts naming names of people who could be kind of like, subject to, who he considered made treasonous acts. And the journalist even says, you realize that treasonous is punished by death, right? And he doesn't miss a beat, right? That's crazy. So one of the standard things you learn, right, is that if you were probably playing sole power politics, right, if you want to go after the media, as Trump has been doing over and over and over again, like after the New York Times, the people that are investigating, the hard-hitting kind of like long-term journalists, right, you don't go after the New York Times. Right? If you go after the New York Times, that's you're going after the hardest person, or the hardest group in order to kind of defend against. They've got their lawyers, they got all the background. No, what you do is you go after the weakest link in that. You go after someone like Julian Assange, who has a hugely tarnished image on the right and a hugely tarnished image on the left. The right hate him because he leaked all the stuff about the war in Iraq. The left hate him because he leaked all the stuff that helped get Trump elected. Right? So you go after Julian Assange to set the precedent to suppress all investigative journalism. So if that case goes forward and people start getting behind it because they hate Julian Assange, right, you're basically going to be part and parcel and complicit with, like, basically signing the death knell of investigative journalism for the next 4 years of the Trump administration. So this is serious. And this is probably some of the greatest threat to our First Amendment rights and to the freedom of the press that we have seen in ages. And if you believe that your government and corporation should be held accountable by an independent press, right? Even though I know people don't love the press. But if you believe that we have the right in order to expose them, what they're doing in our name, then this case is going to be fundamental. So we will be covering that too as well. Last thing I'll mention, two things. This is on the EU stuff. Oh wait, Sean, I'm sorry. I should give you time to comment on that. I know this is something that you've been following too as well.
Yeah, no, I almost feel like the attacks here on Assange. I mean, I don't know, a continuation of what Obama did, and a lot more to a worse degree. I mean, Obama used the Espionage Act in unprecedented ways to go after whistleblowers within the government, and I mean, like, people were talking about this at the time when he was going after these whistleblowers.
That's right.
Like Chelsea Manning and like others within the government, that like he's opening up a really dangerous Pandora's box. And if the wrong person gets in there, those powers might get expanded in ways we don't want. And like, I mean, here we are. Like, I don't think Assange would have been prosecuted if Clinton was president.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we should say too as well, the Obama administration actually considered the same thing, right? Again, Obama was noticing you put everything on the table, right? And one of the things that was being considered by some sectors, or at least was brought to his attention, about going after Julian Assange on espionage, and ultimately the Obama people said no, because if we did that, they could see it was like one step away from like going after all kind of investigative journalism. There's like no, we are not doing that.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So last thing, if you wonder what Steve Bannon has been up to, all I got to say is take a look at what happened at the EU this past weekend. Steve Bannon, after he left the Trump administration, has basically been nonstop in Europe. And he'd been working with these extremist right-wing parties, these kind of ultra-nationalist parties, and basically helping them do there what he helped Trump and the people on the right do here. And I'm not saying that Steve Bannon is like the guy who's like, the master manipulator, but he certainly knows what he's doing. And the fact that he has been helping out over in Europe tells you a whole lot about kind of how effective he's been in some of the messaging issues. Right-wing extremism, right, has been on the rise, what they're calling right-wing populism, whatever you want to call about. Neo-fascism, right?
There's a word for it. It's called fascism.
Right. And they basically won a huge number of seats in the European Parliament. And basically, after there was some pushback at the national election levels for leaving the EU, basically they decided on a different kind of strategy, basically kind of destroy the EU from the inside. The fact that they had so many seats won, including Macron in France, basically went out and campaigned personally, saying this is about me, and he lost in France to Le Pen's party, right, the fascist party. In the EU elections. So that's really, really important to know, because that's going to have like long-term impacts about what actually happens in Europe. And if you've seen what's been happening in Poland, for example, about the rise of kind of like neo-fascist stuff there, anti-immigrant stuff there, it's like you're seeing kind of Trumpism, basically, versions of Trumpism kind of gain strangleholds in politics all over Europe. And this is becoming increasingly problematic because of refugee crises. That's kind of being one of the things that's being used as the wedge issue to kind of bolster and feed the flames of right-wing populism. And this is pretty crazy. And the last thing to say about that is after Theresa May stepped down as prime minister on Friday, the fact that you had Tony Blair come out, right? He looked, as
and
kind
fuck
of
Tony Blair.
Yeah, totally. Shit. He's such an asshole. And he's like, but he comes out and he's all kind of like, looks like seriously that he just had his like fresh round of plastic placed over his face, right? And he basically comes out and says, the reason that the biggest problem why that you're seeing the gain in Brexit and everything like this is because Jeremy Corbyn. That's right.
I do think that Corbyn should be like calling for a second referendum vote on Brexit, but I mean, you can't be blaming Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, it's because he's too far left. You see, he's Corbyn is.
But Corbyn is what like Labour has been for most of its existence,
right? And
a socialist party, like
right.
I mean,
that Blair helped kill.
Yeah, like I mean, Labour was always a socialist party in Europe. Like, I mean, yeah, and not like socialists who like spouting Marxism, but socialism where we have a strong national health, we have strong public housing, we have these strong social security programs in Europe. And yeah, Tony Blair was one of the people who helped kill that. Yep.
Crazy. Oh man. Any closing thoughts on the national stuff, Sean?
No, I'm ready for the second part.
All right, good. All right, well, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. We'll have a lot more on a lot of the stuff for you on Friday when we get back, hopefully, to kind of more of a regular schedule. We're going to have to talk a little bit about the summer and how we're going to do this. But want to remind everybody the way you can help support this podcast, the way you can help support Pull No Punches, progressive media, is by becoming a member of Raging Chicken Press. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress today. I want to remind everybody we have 3 new writers. We've got, I'm sure you've seen, we got a couple of her pieces that are coming out there. We've got Dorcas Olotunji. She's been kind of writing us, our youngest writer that we brought on board. She's kind of writing from Delaware. She's got some great stuff out there. She's a piece up there on kind of the abortion conflicts, the arguments, or not the arguments, the legislation being passed, the anti-abortion legislation. And we've got Addison and we've got Stephen that'll be coming on board this summer. Hopefully I'll have Addison's piece reviewed and stuff to come up soon. He's got a great piece kind of waiting in the wings that we're going to launch us right into Lehigh Valley socialism. So I'm very psyched about that. But so the way you can support these young writers, these new writers, and the way that you can make sure that the movement is kept in the media and the media is kept in the movement, become a member of Raging Chicken Press today. Go to patreon.com/rcpress today. We'll be right back.
and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day the working people of New York stood up in true labor solidarity. It all started at the stroke of midnight on May 15th, as messengers delivered the following statement to 489 municipal employees. This is to advise you that the position you held in the Department of Public Works has been abolished by the city manager, and your services with the city of Rochester are terminated as of midnight this date. This action is the result of a change of policy deemed necessary to protect public interest. What was the workers' so-called act against public interest? Trying to form a union. Earlier that May, city workers had founded the Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 871, as part of the AFL. The next day, 500 city workers crowded into the Carpenters Hall to figure out what to do next. Teamsters Locals 118 and 398 pledged their support. The area labor councils of both the AFL and CIO met to plan their response. On May 20th, labor called for a public protest and 24-hour-a-day pickets of the Department of Public Works. The next day, 54 picketers were arrested. Finally, at 3 a.m. on this day in labor history, a citywide general strike was declared. Newspaper presses fell silent and buses did not run. More than 13,000 members of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union walked off the job. In all, more than 30,000 workers joined the strike. After one day, the city gave in. They agreed to reinstate the fired workers and recognize their right to form a union. Today, public unions are again under attack, and labor solidarity is more important than ever. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Out to Coup podcast. And this week in the PA Focus, we've got a lot to talk about, I think. Oh, wait. What? Oh, whoa. Wait, hold on. Wait, Sean, did just nothing happen in PA this week?
So
I'm sorry. Week and a half. My fault.
So I would say, I did not really catch anything this week for the PA section, but there is one issue I'd really like to talk about because it's been in my crawl for the past few months.
Go for it.
We have, I think we should really just touch upon this every time. The charter, there's this appeals board in the Department of Education called the Charter Appeals Board. And basically, if a charter school gets denied or if there's an issue with charter schools in the school districts on the local level, those charter schools then have the opportunity to appeal and go in front of this appeals board in Harrisburg. There are 6 people on the board. Pedro, Department of Ed Secretary Pedro Rivera is one of them. And then there are 5 people who have terms that expired in 2015 when Tom Corbett left office. And really what this board is becoming, I do not know the background information on why these people have not been replaced within the Wolf administration, but they have not. And what we have essentially is this board that where Tom Corbett's legacy is still writing charter school law in Pennsylvania. By essentially granting, this is a quasi-judicial board, and this board is stacked with Corbett appointees, and it is issuing charter school opinions on charter schools, and it is allowing the charter school movement to basically use this thing as a vehicle. If we get denied, we'll get the 1,000 signatures we need, and then go in front of this appeals board and get our charter school that way.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things we cannot. I like your idea, Sean, that we can consistently come back to this because, and make sure that this is kind of one of these stories that we continue to cover on the podcast because I think you're absolutely right that it's no one's paying attention to this whatsoever. But I think one of the important points about what you said is look, you don't know the backstory about what other stuff, and in a sense, it doesn't matter. The backstory doesn't matter here. The fact is that charter school kind of rules, policy, and legislation is being written by Corbett appointees.
Yes, and it's 2019.
Yep.
And Corbett lost in 2015.
Yeah,
like
so
we are in the second term of Tom
do the
Wolf's.
math. Right, exactly. Oh, maybe you can't because you went to a charter school.
But I mean, like, and
unfair.
like, so I sat through this 3-hour hearing on Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
Very dull, very monotonous, but you get to see how this thing operates. There was no media there. It was just Roxbury and I were there, pretty much the only two. And like there was an issue with the previous vote that happened in February with the meeting not being posted correctly, so they had to take a revote. So they revoted and they granted Catalyst's charter their appeals. So Catalyst will now be able to operate as a charter school out in the Pittsburgh area. There are 2 other charter schools that were there this week. This hearing, Eastern University Charter School in Philadelphia, and then Propel Charter School out in Allegheny, which has 8 schools in Allegheny. So like there's 2 separate things here. So the Eastern University Charter School, they had their charter school renewal denied from the Philadelphia School Reform Commission. Just let that sink in.
Yep.
The charter entity in Philadelphia denied this charter school.
So wait, just to make sure everybody gets this. So this charter school goes to the School Reform Commission and says, will you approve this? The School Reform Commission says, no. And then they're now testifying in front of the Charter Appeals Board in Harrisburg. So they basically they say no, and they go, wah! And they run to the Charter Appeals Board.
Yes, and like this university, Eastern University Charter School, was supposed to be one of these charter schools that teamed up with the university. Like since 2012, they may have had like 30 kids take college credit courses with Eastern University. When like
so it's a big deal.
Completely not hitting their standards, the metrics they were supposed to be hitting. There's plenty of issues. I think like 3/4 of the staff don't have appropriate credentials to be teaching in a charter school. They don't have the appropriate federal or state background checks to be teaching around kids. So there's issues with that.
Well, Sean, that's like the whole purpose of charter schools, though. Think outside the box, right?
They are extremely. This charter school is not proficient on the school district levels, and they're not hitting the metrics. This thing almost seems like a money grabbing scam. And what was funny, like when they testified, 2 of the board members who were actually there this time had to recuse themselves because they either teach at Eastern University that is paired with this charter school, or they sit on the board, or
You're
like some sort. No, I am not kidding you. And then it gets even better. So like for Propel, one of the people who called in is a mother who has 3 kids within the Propel charter schools in Pittsburgh. So she had to recuse herself from there, but she was allowed to stay on the line and listen to the arguments.
Okay.
Which I guess is like what she was saying. I know this is an odd request, but since I have kids that go to Propel, am I able to stay on the line and listen to this? I will not participate or ask her answer any questions. And like, so she was, on there. She was listening. So like,
was she allowed to text other members of the board as she was listening?
I have no clue, but like.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, so there's issues with Propel. Propel has like some of their schools, they have 8 schools ranging from like 5 kids to like 300. And they're trying to start their own like quasi school district within the Pittsburgh school district.
Man.
I mean, it is absolute insanity what this board is doing. And the next board will meet like June 18th, and we'll be voting on these 2 issues. Now, with the recusals of you don't know how the votes are going to go, but like this is like one of these things that like I guess is like a good government issue that you should be like paying attention to.
Right.
That this thing like actually exists and it's just streamlined. It's just a board full of corporate appointees that is there for the sense of just streamlining charter appeal, granting appeals to charter schools and letting them establish that stuff their own way.
Man, I just don't understand why this is not like a concern of the Wolf administration. I mean, you know, as a guy who's basically tried to increase school funding, has been advocating for like higher teacher salaries, has been seen by many at least as an education like governor, that this is like a lot. And I can't figure out if this has something to do with money, which is usually where I go to. It's like that where, hey, okay, we'll let you have all your pro-education stuff. Just don't touch this board. Right? Or if it's just lack of concern. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. But these, I mean, we're not talking about like...
And Donna Cooper from PCCY a few months ago was quoted in a story. Like, this is where you have to have the deal making behind the scenes. Like, you give people... you let the Republicans give patronage jobs to people within different levels of state government as trade-offs, and this is like where you have to wheel and deal. And I just don't know. I can't speak because I don't know.
No, I know. I know. And you've said that.
I don't want to say anything that like will get me in trouble.
No. But you've been consistent on this for a while. Like, I mean, you've been saying, like, look, this is just insane. It's elder insanity. Well, and it's just there's like a huge like gaping silence right around it. And I don't mean silence as people don't talk about it. It's like that. It's just bizarre that there's no attention paid to this. I mean,
there's no media coverage of this stuff. Like media does not show up to this.
Well, so you went to the school board commission. Like, how many other people were there to kind of cover this? The appeals board. How many media people were there to cover it?
It was just Roxbury and I.
Just the two of you.
Yeah, I mean, I was live tweeting and streaming parts of it. But like it's
so you're there, you're covering it. There's no other media that's covering it, and yet we're talking about the potentially of a shadow school district being formed and approved, right, or at least facilitated by a decision by this appeals board.
Yes,
and there's no coverage of it. This is really troubling people.
I mean, like the Propel thing is interesting. I mean, like. Yeah, it's, but yeah, I mean, it's just something we have to pay attention to. It's something that needs to be needs to be watched carefully every time that they meet, because I think this flew under the radar for so long with people not knowing what it was or just not following it. And when you see it pop up in the newspaper, it looks like it's just like the chart, like Catalyst charter, like. As soon as the charter got appeal was approved to Catalyst, there was a story out in the Post-Gazette. Now, I don't think a Post-Gazette reporter was there. I didn't see anyone. They might have been, but they might have just got there and left. But it looked like it just came from there was no like back and forth on the arguments that were made about Catalyst. It looks like it was just a press release that was issued about this school getting it approved, getting the grant getting approved. But I mean, like it pops up in the newspapers from time to time, but no one really sits there and watches how this thing operates.
But this is what this is the problem, right? Because the problem is that these are the kind of things that will show up in the newspaper after a decision has been made.
Exactly. Yes.
Right. I mean, this is, I remember we had this discussion about, it wasn't about the charter school stuff, but we talked about, this was earlier on in your time out in Harrisburg. When you were actually digging into a lot of issues and kind of covering a bunch of issues, and you were kind of you kept on coming back to this idea that there were these proposals that were being offered by Republicans primarily, these fairly extreme proposals that were happening in committees or hearings or things like this, and you'd have other reporters that would kind of just say to you, look, it's never going to pass, so why are you even covering it, right? And I always remember that you were kind of like taken back by that a bit. Because you're saying, but wait a minute, this is the kind of stuff that we need to be paying attention to. So even if it doesn't pass, you're seeing what the agenda is, right? And who is advocating for that agenda. And very often, as part of those hearings and stuff, you were finding out where the money was coming from behind it. Because the people who came to testify were a part of the people, like the Commonwealth Foundation, for example, that were supporting this stuff. And this is why. So,
and again, like Eastern University Charter School, they busted about like 50, 60 kids, packed the room during the oral arguments, and like if you look on the Facebook page, like or their accounts, it's pictures of them with Joe Scarnati, pictures of them from the EITC tax credit birthdays and stuff like that. I mean, like some of these schools I mean, like, I get an argument with my one friend who's a reporter about, like, the operation of charter schools where, like, well, we should have charter schools and blah, blah, blah. Like, they're supportive of them. But I'm like, yeah, but, like, it's the Wild West.
Right.
Of unregulation out here in Pennsylvania.
Right.
I mean, this Eastern University charter school, you listen to these oral arguments that are being brought forward, especially from the lawyers on the Philadelphia School Reform Commission side. I mean, the Philadelphia School Reform Commission brought like 10 people there with them. Lawyers, chief of staffs, counsel, and stuff like that. I mean, they packed the room with their own like lawyers and stuff like that. And it, like, you listen to these arguments coming from the school district and the School Reform Commission. I mean, it just sounds like these are outright scams.
Yep.
I mean, and like the possibility of this charter school, it's an outright scam. I mean, 2 of the board members had to recuse themselves because they either taught at Eastern University or they're financially connected to this university or the charter school itself. And it's just like you see this stuff and it's unbelievable. Like,
right.
And you hear the one woman go, oh, I need to recuse myself from this argument because I have kids that go to Propel charter schools in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Like,
well, and here's the thing, right? And I think that this is a perfect example when you talk about your argument with your friend, right? Is I think the argument here is not like charter schools or not charter schools. That is an argument, right?
I mean, I'm ideologically against charter schools.
Well, no, right,
yes.
right. But I'm saying but that's the top level argument, right? Now you go to the next level, and the question is, okay, now that there are charter schools. Right, we can have the argument about whether or not we should have them. There are charter schools. The question is, how does that operate? Right, and I think that the image that most people have of what a charter school is, right, is a school that gives opportunity to youths who don't have it otherwise. Right, so it's this glorified kind of like heavily PR blitzed version of kind of helping out poor inner city folks. And I will say there are some of those charter schools that will actually do that. Right, so I'm not saying everyone is that way. And I feel like I'm having a weird kind of like, the not all men kind of argument, kind of, except for now in charter schools. Well, not all charter schools, hashtag. But then the other image you have of charter schools is like, I remember when I lived up in Allentown, there was this kind of group of people that started this charter school. It's called like 7th Generation Charter School or something. And the whole concept was that we need to, it was coming from the kind of Iroquois, I think it was Iroquois saying that, we need to pay attention to 7 generations before the 7 generations forward, right? Our decisions today will impact them. And it was that kind of logic. And if you looked at what their mission was and how they were approaching it, it was kind of like this really kind of Montessori-esque kind of approach to it with a social justice component, right? And that's the other side. You have this one charter schools that are trying to help out those kids, right? That are in bad school districts in the inner city, and these other ones that are the kind of the alternative education that provide kind of a ways of thinking forward. And those are the two models. We don't necessarily look at them as these huge money-making corporate kind of thing, or even if they're not profit, they're ultimately corporate, because a lot of these bigger charter schools, like Eastern University Charter School, like Propel, right? They basically, I don't know if them specifically, but some like them will produce. They have a for-profit version which produces all their materials, and the schools have to buy from the for-profit company, right? So one of the ways that they make money, kind of on these side deals, but these are kind of, even if you're a proponent of saying, yes, we should have kind of a cutout for some charter schools, right? It's not charter or no charter. It's like Sean said, the Wild West, anything goes, and we're just going to like subject our the next generation of kids to freaking some random social experimentation that's about profit getting or taking for a few people at the top, or we can actually kind of talk about what's necessary within these and
also
these schools.
Like, again, issues with Eastern University, like they were non-compliant when it came to educating parent involvement with students who have IEPs.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, and they're like, this has been an issue with Catalyst Charter School, who just got approved. And like, I mean, ESL, secondary language, like there's a bunch of issues happening here with like, it's weedy, like wonky education stuff, but it's also like stuff that's like fairly basic. I mean, like in the February issue, like if there's any like lawsuits that happen against Catalyst with their IEPs and not like teaching well, that money that falls back onto like the school districts. Those like the charter schools aren't funding those lawsuits themselves. That money gets sucked away from the school district.
Yeah.
I mean, like, these are like actual issues, like with like Eastern University and stuff like this, and what we're allowing here is like Tom Corbett's legacy to like continue to write charter school law in Pennsylvania, or to at least enact it and enact its own vision of it.
Yep. Crazy, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, this will definitely be kind of front and center. And if there's anybody that wants to write about this and wants to interview Sean so that they can write about this stuff and publish it on Raging Chicken Press, that'd be awesome. But if not, please listen to the podcast. Oh, man. So anything else going on in Pennsylvania, Sean?
I mean, we had some fun elections results last week here in Harrisburg. Our school board just got completely eviscerated, which was good. We, in Harrisburg, pretty much like holdovers from the Linda Thompson and Stephen Reed administrations were controlling the charter school. The reform candidates went 5 for 5 on this. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like, do you want dysfunction, or are you going to vote for a couple of people who might support a charter school here and there,
right?
But are also endorsed by AFSCME, the teachers union, and also endorsed by like the developers in the area. I mean, it was truly stunning. Like, everyone came out and won. A fair district activist in the area, Jane Bukwak, she will now be leading the charter school board once she gets in there in December. Or not the charter school board, the Harrisburg school board.
Right.
But I mean, like, we have
charter schools on my mind.
Oh, and also something that was really funny we should probably talk about. This is actually a little wonky, but so out here in Dauphin County, Democratic Party is very dysfunctional. So George Hartwick, the incumbent Democrat, ran a candidate to basically essentially like block others from getting the second spot on the ballot.
Oh, that's good.
So he ran. So him and Diane Bowman were the. I can't believe I'm name dropping this right now, but him and Diane Bowman were the two on the slate, and they were campaigning together the whole entire time. And the way it was supposed to go was that George Hartwick was supposed to like the top two. It's 2 or 3, so the top 2 vote getters get the ballot position. And so George Hartwick was supposed to get the top ballot position, but he did not. He managed to run the slate. The person he picked, Diane Bowman, actually finished like 700 or 800 votes in front of him in the county election. So like, this is the type of thing like where like the head of the Dauphin County Commissioners is a Republican, is extremely pissed off about this because he managed to fuck this up. The other Republican on the Dauphin County Commissioner is just laughing his ass off. He thinks this is hilarious. And now, like, the state party, people are calling the state party asking what the fuck happened and how did he mess this up?
Oh my God.
So now we're trying to spin it where we can have 2 Democratic county commissioners, and all is happy here in Dauphin County, and we might actually win some seats that we never won before in the history of Dauphin County, and blah blah blah. But there's a good chance that George Hartwick might have screwed himself out of the seat.
Nothing like having a banana peel working for you.
come November. And, I mean, it might be the type of thing where, because Diane Bowman, the woman, she cannot just drop out of the race at this point and be given a job somewhere, which was sort of like the deal. Because then it would just look really horrible. And then, yeah, so it is just a, mess. And it's basking in it, and just everyone out here does not know what's going on, and people are not happy.
Oh my God.
The Republicans are not happy. The Democrats are not happy.
Well, at least they're both not happy.
It just shows you the depth of corruption out here in Dauphin County, and how again it's open.
Well, they'll keep the bars in business.
I mean, but you look at it. The corruption in this county it's just so open that just so what? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's just like it's just how it is. I mean, like we get so much in gaming money out here in Dauphin County. We get so much in like hotel tax revenue. They give out all these grants like weeks before the election, which is pretty much like whams, essentially like walking around money at that point, like to get people to vote for them and all. Hartwick missed a vote. Decided not to go to a county commissioner meeting when they were voting on giving like $3 million in grants away, like hotel tax grants, and $80,000 of that went to the NRA for their annual gun show out here in Harrisburg.
Oh, that's good.
So, like, I mean, yeah, so he skips it just to not, like, take that hard vote and have that used against him.
Sometimes I feel nothing but kind of warm, fuzzy feelings inside, Sean. You know what I'm saying? It's so good.
I mean, it's just like the county government out here is pretty fun.
Yeah, I just, I wish I had this long conversation. This is something else we'll talk about a little bit more on Friday, because there were a lot of primaries. There's some important stuff that happened in Lehigh Valley this past week, but I know that we had a little bit of condensed time window to do the podcast today, so I didn't want to pack the show with too much. But I do want to talk about what happened in Lehigh Valley on Friday. Some great kind of election results there. I want to talk a little bit about what happened in the Penridge school board elections. What's that?
How'd that go?
It was really, really cool. And I'll give you the short version of it. So there was a slate of candidates called that I was campaigning for called One Penridge, right? And they're basically running against a school board that is basically taken over through what's been called locally a coup, right? By a bunch of these folks supported by this one group called the Penridge Taxpayers Group, which is as kind of, Trumpian as you can get, right? And so anyways, the school board that's in there now, they're just, first of all, the way they just at the very baseline level, the way that they speak to other people, the one who are controlling it, that they disagree with on the board is just like you don't expect this at a school board, right? I mean, they're just horrible. And the fact is that when I started really paying attention to this, I mean, not only are my kids in the school district, but after the walkout, like the kind of the March for Our Lives walkouts that took place, there was a Penridge 225 students who were given detention after they walked out in support of kind of banning guns and gun control legislation following the Parkland shooting. The school board members, a couple of the school board members in particular, and I don't want to kind of get into the specifics right now because it'll lead me down a path we don't have time for, but basically they came out and started directly attacking those students on Twitter, right? And you're thinking, and that same groups were also retweeting white nationalist stuff, right? So it was like, I'm like, whoa, this is right in my backyard, right? So I got to get involved. I got to figure out what's going on. And actually, some people stepped up. I was actually talking to a neighbor of mine not too long ago, and his daughter actually got sick. She had leukemia, so we kind of backed off that. But we started talking about going to school board meetings and thinking about running down the road because of what we saw was going on. But then this group of other people stepped up. These 5 candidates stepped up for the Penridge School Board called One Penridge, and they ran on both tickets as every one of the school board does. You run on Democrat and Republican tickets.
Which should be illegal. Cross-filing should be.
It's just... We could say that, right? But the idea was, right, is that they put a lot into campaigning for the primary, right? Because they figured if you could win the primary, then the November election is up there. And they concentrated a lot on campaigning in Republican areas, the strong Republican areas, and so on, and have a message which is really about transparency, about kind of professionalism, about kind of like forward-thinking plans for the district, and they were. And so they ran on both tickets. Again, none of them were endorsed by the Republican Party. Right, but they had about 70% more of their funding came from individual donations. Right, almost all the funding for the campaigning for the existing school board came from the Republican Party and some dark money, which is interesting. But in the end, they obviously they won. All of them won. I don't even know if all of them are Democrats actually, but. All of them won on the Democratic ticket by a landslide. Another should be notable. One of the students who was actually given detention as part of the walkout. She also ran for school board, right? And I got a chance to meet her, which was awesome. But so, anyways, they ran and won on the Democratic side of the ticket. They lost on the Republican side of the ticket. But the important thing here is that on the Republican side of the ticket, say they were getting 1,500. The lowest vote total was something like 1,500 or 1,300 votes for the existing school board candidate. The one Penridge, the top vote getters, the one Penridge, were getting 1,000 votes on the Republican side. So if you look at the total votes cast in the primary, right, they've got an overwhelming majority of the votes. Now, again, this is a primary and this is not a general election. So those things, that doesn't say therefore they're going to win in the fall. It doesn't mean that at all, because it's going to get more intense moving forward. But it shows you that that the campaigning was important. And again, it was door-to-door knocking, individual volunteers, a grassroots organization that helped build that stuff. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. I even talked more about it than I was going to talk about it today to begin with. But there's some interesting stuff looking forward for the fall there too as well, in terms of just, again, the Penrith School District around here. There's some other stuff that happened with Tabora Farms, of the election that's going on there too. I could talk about that as well. But anyways, anything else for PA Focus?
No, that's it. I think I got some things I could talk about. We can talk about more on Friday. There are a bunch of white nationalists and Proud Boys are getting involved in politics down in the Southeast. They're with school board races. Like one of them who we've been following for a couple of years got through. There's also some Proud Boys who are providing security for the rallies that were happening over the past year, who are associated with the Philadelphia GOP. And they are running campaigns for people who are trying to get onto the minority positions in Philadelphia City Council.
Pretty cool.
And also Doug Mastriano won his Senate race, which he was going to win anyway. And he's very Islamophobic, very racist, veteran down in like the Gettysburg area. He got through, and looking through campaign finance reports, he got some money from a Matt Breyer funded dark money group.
Oh, that's really interesting. Imagine that. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we do have a lot on the plate. We're just a little crunch for time today, so we'll get into some more of this on Friday. Well, for now, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. We will be back right after this with this week's Let's Call! This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. For the past 7 years, Raging Chicken Press has brought pull-no-punches, progressive reporting and commentary to the interwebs. Our long-form investigative pieces, stories that no-access journalist wants to touch, or rollicking weekly podcasts strive to advance progressive movements and perspectives rooted in the struggles happening across the country or down the street. We've broken national stories and caused our share of discomfort in the halls of power. If we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. And you can help support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. We need to make sure to keep the movement in the media and the media in the movement. Best way you can do that is to become a member of Raging Chicken today by going to patreon.com/rcpress. Thank you for your energy, your encouragement, and your support. Keep up the fight. Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. It's the last call. Last call, everybody. And this is where we do space news, beer news, and whatever kind of fun stuff that is going on. So today, I'll get the space news out of the way right off the bat. It was kind of interesting. You may have seen some of this, some of the coverage. SpaceX just launched 60 what they're calling Starlink satellites, right? And basically what those are is they're looking at these micro, or however you want to call them, these very small micro satellites that are going to build like a mesh network basically for internet access across the globe. Theoretically, what this is going to do is going to provide internet access, global internet access anywhere, and communications actually too as well. But what it means is that instead of just having one satellite or two satellites up there, you have to have hundreds of satellites that are kind of in constant orbit around the Earth that are going to create this mesh for communication. The problem is that when they put them up, that they just launched it this a few days ago. When they were deployed, they're deployed basically in a single line, right? And it's kind of freaky if you look at the image. If you click in the show notes, you click on the link, you can go check it out. But it literally looked like a string of pearls moving across the night sky, right? In a line, in like a perfect line moving across the sky. So the people didn't know what was going on. They looked up and they saw this. They freaked out a little bit. They're like, what the hell's going on? This is not supposed to happen. Like, is this finally the alien invasion that's going to happen? I said, no. It was Elon Musk's shiny new Starlink satellites. But almost immediately, astronomers were pissed off because the fact is that now when you looked up, it looked like there was a string of pearls moving across the night sky. That means you're basically fundamentally altering like the night sky vision forever, right? Or as long as these satellites are in orbit, right? Because of the way that they reflect light. So, but no worries. Elon Musk comes out and says, "Oh, we've heard the Twitter world and the complaints from astronomers, and so the next round of whatever 120 satellites they're going to put up as part of the Starlink system won't be quite as shiny." Right? So, that's it. What was remarkable about it, though, is that it also showed you a little bit just of the scale of stuff that is up there that we don't normally get to see. Right, because if you spend enough time outside and you look up at the stars, you can see satellites go by once in a while, right? You can see the space station move by, right? If you know where to look at what time to look. But every once in a while, you'll kind of catch a satellite that you just didn't expect to be there if you're spending enough time out there. What this was different is like you looked up and people just saw it, right? Because it was this string of lights moving across the sky. So, and it was kind of freaky. So, we'll see. Here's the next thing. Now, despite all that, now you might have been following some of the news that Tesla's stock has just like tanked this past couple of weeks, right, for a whole bunch of variety of reasons. But so there's all sorts of questions about it. Does this mean the end of Tesla, whatever like this? A lot of that is kind of like caught up in the whole, trade war that's going on. Tesla has built an enormous factory now out in China, not to kind of build cars in China to ship back to the United States, but to build cars in China for China. But there's some impacts of what's going to happen in terms of the trade for there. But so there's a whole bunch of stuff like that. So there's been all this kind of decrying this. But meanwhile, SpaceX, right on the other side, they basically had these 2 rounds of fundraising going out and kind of seeking donors for this. SpaceX is a privately held company at this point, so it's not the kind of thing on the stock market. Privately held company at this point, and they raised over $1 billion for not only just the Starlink system, right, which shows you where these kind of private investors are going, but to help fund their future adventures kind of off the planet. So this is going to be, again, like I've been saying now, like a broken record, at least for well over a year now. This is where the big next play is happening in space. I'll also say I happen to actually, I didn't know this until this past weekend. We have, every year there's this big garage sales on Memorial Day. We put stuff out on our garage sale every year. And a friend of ours, one of my kids' friends, their parents went away and their grandparents were watching them, right? And so we invited them to come over. Say, hey, you got stuff you want to bring over? Kind of bring it over too as well. And so the kids come over and the grandparents come over, and we've met them before, and they're really, really nice people. And so we're all sitting around talking, and it turns out that the grandparents, right, of my kids' friends worked for like the space industry. Right, for years. As a matter of fact, the guy, right, was one of the people that built the camera that is on the lunar module, right, the lunar lander, right, the lunar and the what do you call it? I was going to say go-kart, right, the rover, right? That they landed and the astronauts drove around. You see pictures of that's still on the moon. There's a camera mounted right on the front. This is the guy who helped design it. He showed me a picture of when they first finished it before it was on the actual lunar lander, and a picture when he was the young guy. And then now there's a mock-up, or not a mock-up, but another version of that he went and kind of saw at this one place, and they took another picture of him, so he had this side by side, and they showed me the picture where it is on the lunar lander stuff. So it was just kind of cool, and the woman also worked in the space industry. She worked a whole bunch of kind of stuff. So it was just kind of really kind of cool hearing them talk about this stuff. And I asked them about this, just kind of say, I talk to my kids about this all the time, but I'm always saying to people, it's like, look, right now we're talking about a renaissance of kind of the space industry. And I keep on saying, this is the next big play. And they both look at me like, yep. And they're like, most people don't even get it. Most people don't know. I'm like, but that's it. He's like, the money that is out there right now is unbelievable, right? So that was just good to have a little small confirmation, right, what was going on, and to kind of maybe chip away at Sean's skepticism with me talking about space.
What's that? I'm sorry, I was reading other things right now.
Exactly, I know. Well, let's get back something that you were a little bit more familiar with. YOLO! So you had a good weekend.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend. I mean, Arts Fest was up here. Went out walking around with some friends. Had a farm show milkshake on Saturday, and
you posted the picture everywhere.
There were no fascists around to toss it at, so I had to.
Man, too bad.
Hey, I love this new method of just tossing milkshakes at people. Like, it's $5 well spent, I think. Throwing at Tommy Robinson or Nigel Farage and stuff like that. I mean, that's what needs to happen to these people. They need to be ostracized in public like that. But no, Arts Fest is up here. Had a couple of really good IPAs. Evergreen had a beer tasting table, so
nice.
That was nice. Yes.
Nice. This is, by the way, if anybody wants to put just a little, doesn't have to be that long, could be like 30 seconds or so, 15 seconds or so. You want to put a little kind of like song together, right? A little kind of ditty that incorporates the word milkshake in it. I would love to have that as a sound drop on the show. So if you got a few minutes to go through, it's a milkshake. So I don't care what it is, right? I mean, I don't care how it sounds. If you got several of them come in, we'll put them in our show drop. I would love to have some sound from the milkshake. So every time one of these fascists gets milkshake, we can highlight that with your sound. So
I mean, there was a streak there like 5 days in a row.
I know. It got me. So, oh man, it's be so great with election season coming up. Man, I get to see like the milkshake. Be really awesome. So pretty cool. So Sean was busy at Arts Fest, basically having milkshakes and drinking IPAs and things like this. And then he just got me.
I also subscribed to Philly.com over the weekend.
And what's that?
I also subscribed to Philly.com, finally.
I'll listen to that. So if you have comments about Sean subscribing to Philadelphia Inquirer or Philly.com, please leave them in the show notes. Very good for you, Sean, supporting local journalism.
Yep.
Yep. He says.
No, I finally hit the point where I wanted to support one of the papers. A lot of like the stuff, the state reporting. There's a lot of collaboration happening between Philly.com, the Philadelphia Inquirer journalist, and the Post-Gazette journalist in the newsroom in the Capitol. So a lot of stuff is getting cross-posted between those 2 or 3 platforms. But I still like paying attention to Philadelphia politics, what's happening in Philly, and also reading Philly sports. So, when the Eagles come around, I can actually read stories about sports in football season. I know.
Well, no, especially now as like you're working all this stuff. You're working, because paywalls are going up and all this other kinds of stuff that all over the place. And that's, I think we have to start thinking about that too as well. And like to be in a place where you can actually, afford to have that subscription, right? To do this, I mean, I think is one of the best ways you can give back.
Oh, and last week I saw Igor Volsky speak at. At the Midtown Scholar on his book Guns Down. I had a really great conversation. And also got invited to grab a couple beers with them afterwards. So we were sitting at the Millworks for about an hour, had a good conversation. I did bring up the fact that he worked for the neoliberal institution named Center for American Progress.
Did he get his back up for that comment?
He did not appreciate the joke that much. But no, we had a really good conversation.
Making friends every day, Sean.
all the time. No, but we had a really good conversation on like the rhetoric behind gun control debates. What it means when you take the guns out of the wrong hands, which is really just code for taking guns away from black people and colored people in general. But he doesn't want to. He's not calling for gun confiscation. He actually wants to call for laws that reduce the total number of the gun population in civilian use. And the way you do that is not by just background checks or stuff like that, but actually passing laws, competency tests, and, pushing stuff. He's like, listen, like the gay rights movement didn't just happen overnight. It took 20 years, 30 years. And it's just like, someone has to put these ideas out there now, rather than just like keep on talking about half measures and, and these minor reforms that really don't don't have an impact on gun violence. Yes, like some of these reforms are good and they help in small situations, but they don't solve the problem as a whole.
No, that's absolutely right. And and I think he's right. You gotta set the horizon. You gotta put the ideas out. You've got to kind of be for something that is not just kind of like, technocratic working. You actually have to have an idea and a program, and you got to be prepared to be in it for the long haul, which I think we've been saying versions of this since we began the podcast. So that's good to hear. And so, as much as I was joking with Sean about nothing going on in PA, as you can see, there was quite a bit going on. But I'll still keep my offer out there that if anybody would like to listen to this podcast, listen to what Sean says, and then actually kind of report on it, that'd be awesome. Because Sean's look, he's working real hard, folks. Right, and he's really stressed out because he's been just been working nonstop. It's like he tells everybody that he's dropped weight because he's kept beer out and because he's working out, but really it's just the stress of work. It's just we could use some help.
I think it's like the release of stress.
Because I get these emails. I get these emails every once in a while asking about hey, is Sean still writing for Raging Chicken? And I'm like, man, look, I have to write back. I'm like, listen, Sean's really stressed out, man. He's just working nonstop. But if you can still tune into the podcast, listen to him on the podcast. Yes, I know we'd all like to hear more from him and kind of read more of his articles, because I know how important that was to your own political life. But Sean's just leave him alone. All right, he's got too much going on. Double salute. That was good. Just saying. So seriously, if anybody wants to report on Sean Kitchen, then you've been more than welcome to be welcomed into the folds of a Raging Chicken Press, and I'd be happy to bring you aboard. So there we have it. And speaking, and just I'll mention this again. I mentioned this earlier on, but I'm really psyched. Very soon now, we're going to have some new writers that are going to be writing here. We have a Slack channel that we use as kind of like our virtual space, and that's just starting to kind of
I should pay attention to that more often.
Yeah, it'd be really great if you could just like chime in and say hello to people once in a while. Like, I know you're a celebrity and everything, but Jesus Christ. But we're starting to have those conversations among kind of the new members that are there. Everyone participates except Sean. Sean is like, YOLO, man. He's got a bot that he actually kind of like automatically responds, but it's funny because his auto responder is actually misspellings in, so that it's actually always kind of coming out in misspellings. So that's how you know it's actually just a bot. But anyways, but that's really cool, and I'm looking forward to kind of building it. I've got some ideas about how to build this organization moving forward. That is going to be slightly different in terms of how we did things organizationally. But we'll see how that plays out over the summer. But I hope that when you see new articles published by Dorcas, new articles published by Stephen and from Addison, that you give them a shout out, you give them some comments, let them know you're reading that stuff. It's actually very, very helpful to have those comments, whether it's on Facebook, whether you kind of see it on Twitter, retweet our stuff, repost it, and that helps get them out there. And remember, is one of the fundamental founding missions of Raging Chicken Press was to be a space to cultivate activist journalists, activist media, and media activism that was where people could cut their teeth in this work. Right. I mean, Sean, basically, he didn't do any of this stuff before he started doing stuff for Raging Chicken. And, you know, when he and I first started this kind of way back in the day, you know, it was new to him, too. Right. I mean, he had the interest, he had the motivation, he had all the kind of stuff, which I know that's gone by the wayside, but initially it was there. But my point being is, like, you know, having the platform where you can write and participate and actually work this stuff through over time is necessary to get to the point where, if you look at the kind of stuff that Sean has covered, the stories that he's broken, the kind of work that he's doing now, what he brings to this podcast, that is everything to do with being able to have a space that we can cultivate the next generation of journalists who are invested in this stuff. So this is why we constantly push to become a member of Raging Chicken by going to patreon.com/rcpress for as little as $5 a month, and help support these new writers kind of moving up too as well, because we have to be in it for the long haul if we're going to have a hopeful future. So, last thing I want to say is shout out to Free Will. Obviously, we didn't give you the heads up about what was happening on Saturday. I think we mentioned it the week before, but this was their fourth annual Pints and Paws at Free Will, and that's basically they raise money for Harley's Haven dog rescue. People come with their dogs and that kind of stuff, and they have a special brew. The brew that they produced this week, that they released this on Saturday, which I'm going to actually head over there today and actually pick up a 6-pack. Or 4-pack rather, basically it's called Haven. It's a New England style IPA, hopped with cashmere, mosaic, and citra. It's supposed to be really good. It comes in kind of a heavier 7% for something that I'm hearing it kind of has a much lighter taste. So kind of do check it out. And it's raising money for a good cause. $4 from every 4-pack will be donated to Harley's Haven Dog Rescue. And those 4-packs are available both at the main location in Percy, Free Will Brewing Company, and at their tap room at Peddler's Village. So, Sean, anything else interesting, kind of cool for the week?
No, nothing else really going on. Looking forward to the storms later on today.
Yeah, no. This is the other thing I'm going to say for Friday. I'll just mention it right now. Is that Dayton, Ohio, was basically like was like destroyed. Not I should say the town was destroyed, but big swaths that were kind of impacted by a major tornado. I just got back from the mountains for this past weekend, and this is kind of like in the Ricketts Glen area, right? It's kind of where we go up to. And a tornado has torn through there. And if you remember, last year in Wilkes-Barre, a tornado set down and kind of destroyed like a Starbucks, a Panera, and a bunch of kind of things up there, and ripped up a whole bunch of homes or businesses and things like this. And if you talk to people up that area too as well, they say, yeah, every once in a while, maybe once every 10 years or so, a tornado would come through here. Now it seems to be like we got warnings every week.
I know, and same here down in Harrisburg. I mean, thankfully we have not seen a tornado down here yet. But no, I mean it's getting tornado watches again. Like, hey, there might be a possibility of tornadoes and strong hail in your area today. It's becoming the new norm.
It is the new norm, and it's one of the reasons that we're going to be focusing. We'll continue to focus on climate stuff. Right here, there's a new announcement that if you remember, the people from Oh, I can't believe I'm supposed names. Well, basically, you have basically a lot of the protests have been have led by Greta Thunberg. Did I get her name right? From Sweden, and the Extinction Rebellion group, and other groups that are associated with the Green New Deal, like Sunrise Movement. They're basically calling on people for a massive kind of action come the fall that will include things like much more, not just kind of like waving banners and kind of saying please stop, but sounds to be much more kind of direct action focused. And I believe it's like the third week of September. We'll talk more about that on Saturday as well. So anyways, Sean, I'm getting you out of here on time today. How about that?
Amazing.
All right. I know he appreciates it. So listen, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We want to remind everybody to become a member of Raging Chicken for those $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress. Become a member for little as $5 a month. This has been Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press, sitting here with Sean Kitchen. We will be back next week once again. Friday, actually. See ya!
I knew this day would come, but I didn't expect it so soon. Thanks to the actions and statements of Nancy Pelosi in the last 48 hours, the President has brought forth his decision and the Kraken has been unleashed.